Okay, you can do this.
I know. Carvana makes it so convenient to sell your car. It's just hard to let go. My car and I have been through so much together.
But look, you already have a great offer from Carvana. That was fast.
Well, I know my license plate and VIN by heart, and those questions were easy.
You're almost there. Now to just accept the offer and schedule a pickup or drop-off.
How'd you do it? How are you so strong in letting go of your car?
Well, I already made up my mind, and Carvana's so easy.
Yeah, true. And sold.
Go to Carvana.com to sell your car the convenient way.
We're excited to announce that our very own podcasting platform, Zencastr, has become a new sponsor to the show. Check out the podcast discount link in our show notes and stay tuned for why we love using Zen for the podcast.
You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Yes.
This is the CRM Archaeology Podcast. It's the show where we pull back the veil of cultural resources management, archaeology, and discuss the issues that everyone is concerned about. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello and welcome to the CRM Archaeology Podcast, episode 188 for April 22nd, 2020. I'm your host, Chris Webster. On today's show, we talk about headphones in the field and archaeology in the UK during the apocalypse. So put just that one earbud in because the CRM Archaeology Podcast starts right now.
All right, welcome to the show, everyone. Joining me today is Bill in Northern California.
Hello.
Doug in Scotland.
Hi.
Heather in Southern California.
Happy birthday, Chris.
Oh, well, thank you. And
yeah.
Stephen in Calgary.
Hello.
Well, Heather, you broke the ice on that. I was going to mention one thing today. So we're recording this. I feel like it's important in this time frame for people listening in real time to mention the date that we're actually recording. We always mention the date in the intro so you guys know when this came out. But we always record about a week and a half ahead of time. So it's April 12th, 2020 right now. And I think that's important to mention the date because we are, of course, mentioning things related to coronavirus and things like that. And stuff is changing so rapidly that I don't want people to think that, you know, when they hear this, they're like, what are these guys talking about? That the world is a completely different place now. Well, things are changing so quickly that's what's happening. So
also, it feels like it's February 42nd. So it's like, what day is it? I don't know.
Yes.
Is this a Tuesday? It could be a Tuesday.
That's right. Well, let's start it off with something not virus related and something I'm looking forward to using. My wife today gave me. She got me these. I saw this probably, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 months ago on a review, like a pre-release kind of review thing. But it's from Bose, and they're sunglasses with basically, for lack of a better way to say this, basically speakers in the frames. Now, this is not the Archaeotech podcast, but people in CRM archaeology, I'll tell you what, you can go to 10 different projects and you'll have 10 different headphones policies, all the way from, no, you cannot wear headphones because you'll get bit by snakes and you're on a mine, you idiot. And all the way up to people just blasting music with both ears in because maybe you're on an excavation, maybe that's okay. I don't know. There's a lot of polarizing thoughts around wearing headphones and various projects. And there's a lot of regulation too. Like if you are working on a mine, you really aren't supposed to wear headphones. It's just not allowed. Even though the parts of a mine that we're typically working on are the parts where like nobody is anyway. Yet we still have to wear steel toe shoes and hard hats, which always floors me. But anyway, these Bose sunglasses, the first kind of cool thing about them is you can replace the lenses. You can get prescription lenses for them. They come with UVA blocking lenses, UVA and UVB, but you can get polarized lenses as well as a replacement. But then, like I said, you can get prescription lenses for them too. Now, these aren't the like bone conduction headphones that were all the rage probably 5-6 years ago, and I haven't really seen much of since. And those are basically headphones that they hook on behind your ear and then conduct the sound basically through your skull. This is not that. These do have batteries in the arms, and they're really lighter than you would think they are. But they basically just have 3 speakers in each arm of the sunglasses, and they direct sound into your ears. Now, if you're sitting in like an airport or something wearing these, first off, why you're wearing sunglasses in an airport. But anyway, if you're sitting down wearing these, people can hear the sound around you. They're not headphones that go inside your ears, and they're not bone conduction. They're literally just speakers in the headphones that are directed towards your ears, or speakers in the arms. That being said, they sound really great. And like I said, if they're up high, people can hear it around you. But if you're out in the field walking around, not only are you able to listen to podcasts, or if you want to listen to music or something like that, that's great. But then your ears are fully exposed to all the things around you, and you can hear all those things. The new Apple AirPods that came out last fall had what they call transparency mode, which kind of does the same thing, but still, you still have something blocking your ear canals, even though they're letting that sound in that transparency mode. These don't cover your ear canals at all. And they've got a little tiny button on the frames where you can activate Siri. You can hold it down, and this is super cool because they have motion sensors inside the headphones. But if you hold down this button and turn your head to the right, it turns the volume up. And you turn your head to the left, it turns the volume down. And they also have a little microphone in them, so you can take a call on them as well, right on your sunglasses, which is just
very cool.
It's very insanely cool to me. Yeah. I haven't even been outside with these things yet. She literally gave them to me a few hours ago, like before this recording. And we were going to go on a walk, and they look like, honestly, they look like 80s black Ray-Ban sunglasses. Okay. You can probably picture exactly what that means. They have two styles. This is the more Ray-Ban-y style with the square rims. And then they've got the other style, which has got kind of more rounded rims, whatever you want. They're about $200, which, if you're going to pay for a pair of Bose headphones, they're going to cost you about that anyway, more or less, depending on what kind you get. But combined with a pair of sunglasses, that's not a bad value. If you want the prescription lenses, it's more than $300, but that includes prescription lenses. So there's that. But I think it's super cool. I'm really excited to try these outside, try these in the wind, try these, in different environments and see how they are. The one thing I'm really worried about is sunscreen. Sunscreen eats through sunglasses, and eating through a normal pair of sunglasses, I'm kind of like okay with that. But eating through a $200 pair of sunglasses with, speakers and batteries in the ear frames right next to my skull is something to think about. So I don't know.
I don't know if we ever talked about this though, but when you have to wear earplugs in, did we ever figure out whether or not things like AirPods or whatever are good enough to meet the regulations of the sound quality? Like I remember using skull candies back in the day because it seemed like when I was working right next to a jet runway, those idling jets, when I put in the earplugs, my ears would be ringing at the end of the day, even though they were supposed to be the right PPE. But if I listen to music, for whatever reason, that made it not as bad at the end of the day after, 10 hours of sitting right next to a runway. But I remember the construction guys were saying, whenever the inspector or anyone came around or a supervisor, we had to put in the earplugs. But 99% of the time we couldn't hear anyway. And so we just put in our music, and those seem to do better anyway. But I don't remember if we ever figured out, if that was appropriate or not. Because in this case, it seems like you cover all bases. Like you have the tunes, but then you can put in the earplugs too. So when whatever inspector or, occupational hygiene person shows up, you've got in the earplugs like you're supposed to. And then you also can listen to music.
Yeah, that would be real interesting because I don't know if you'd be able to hear the music with good earplugs because it's not bone conduction. As I said, it really is just tiny speakers focused towards your ear canals because they assume everybody's ears are shaped basically the same way. So they focus the sound. And it's really good sound too, by the way. I mean, it's not like you're wearing Bose earbuds or even the cans. Like I'm wearing Bose headphones, like studio headphones right now for my podcasting, and it's never going to sound like that, but it sounds amazingly good. Like the tonal quality is really good. The bass is really good. The treble's really good. But with earplugs in or foamies, I honestly couldn't tell you. I don't think I have a pair here accessible to me that I could try them out on, but I'd be interested to see how that would work. But to be honest, I've never worn earplugs on an archaeology project. Sometimes I may have out on a mine, but I've never been in a situation where I had to actually wear earplugs. I think I've just been lucky.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. While we're talking about this, we're talking about all kinds of random things in archaeology these days. Heather, I like going to you because you work for a company that's like a legit corporation. not that other people don't.
I'll tell him. But a lot of times you said that.
Right. But a lot of times, yeah, like people work for pure archaeology companies a lot where, I mean, it might be a corporation in title, but I mean, come on, it's more of a family run business in a lot of cases. But you work for a corporation. You're one of the few people on this show that have. So I like going to you for different policies and procedures. Do you guys have a headphone policy that's blanket across your company, or is it like up to the project manager in the situation?
It's usually up to the project itself. We don't have anything that's across the board. We have recommendations that say, in general, we suggest you do this, but every project is unique. You are required to follow the rules of that project site. So we have, on our site, and in our employee handbook, we talk about OSHA, all the regulations that OSHA requires as far as earbuds and everything. But then we also defer to the project site. It can obviously never be less than OSHA, but it can certainly be more.
Sure.
But we don't have a across the board stance on earbuds or ear protection.
Yeah. My general philosophy on the projects that I run is typically, obviously, like you said, you default to the agency or organization's regulations. But if they don't have a policy against that or for it or stating anything about it, then I'm generally like, listen, if we're on an excavation, then sure, you can have them both in if you're just cranking away and that helps you get work done. That's fine with me. It depends on, of course, the context and what we're doing. If we're in close quarters and people are swinging pickaxes, then, maybe have an ear out so you can hear for something. But if you're out doing a survey, like pedestrian survey, I'm like, listen, no two headphones. I don't care who you are or where we're at. Don't put them both in, but you can put one in. And, if you're listening to podcasts, that's great. If you're listening to music, well, you need to make sure it's at a level where you can still hear somebody yelling towards you. If we're having radios, then that's fine. You can usually hear that over anything. But then there's always like snakes and all kinds of stuff. And you got to be able to hear the rattle and hear the rustling and things like that. And just be smart about it,
I would have to say, I don't know if I'm the oddball here, but I don't see a lot of people with earbuds in. I do see them on construction sites. One in their ear, but generally I've never had somebody on one of my excavations that wears earbuds. Now I'd like to think that that's because I'm so terribly interesting to listen to that nobody would wear earphones. But I don't know, most excavations, we're in smaller quarters, and I think when you're working alone, it definitely is something that people tend to do more, especially on surveys. But I don't have a rule, but you're starting to make me think maybe I should.
It sounds like you don't really listen to music at work anyhow, though.
We don't. Yeah. Okay. I mean, on our projects, no, it's a conversational environment. That's been my experience, and I'm out in the field a lot. We do a lot of talking. Sometimes I do bring a speaker out, and sometimes I'll play music. If we're in an area that's not going to be annoying to the client or the company or whatever. And sometimes we'll have some fun and play music, but it's for everyone. And we take turns picking the music. But I haven't had too many people that have actually, certainly not in an excavation. On surveys I have, like you said. But the one earphone I think is a good idea, especially with snakes.
Oh, yeah. What
about everybody else? Because I listen to music as much as possible in the field, and it's just got to be, PG-13 basically. And when someone gets frustrated, they just tell someone to turn the channel, right? And we just don't listen to that one thing. I mean, you're all at work, but you got to be able to hear everybody. However, music is like all day. I don't know if maybe that's just me. What about everybody else? I mean, music, if we're excavating and we're in the same spot all day for 10 hours, I mean, got to do something to stay sane. It's not the thrill of discovery is only going to take you so far.
I think it's fun, the communal aspect, and actually listening to the music together, I think is fun, at least. But I think this is a little bit separate from music, but it's the same idea. When you're having conversations, and I've been talking with some of my colleagues about how a project manager, part of their job is to help that conversation along, not get into a negative space. It happens so often on sites, and it can bring down the morale of a site so quickly that, I really think, I personally think that somebody who's a project manager or the crew supervisor, if you have multiple sites with one project and a crew supervisor for each, part of their job is keeping the morale up of the group. And part of that is regulating the conversation. Not to say that you cannot talk about this, but just in a very pragmatic and elegant way, changing the subject to something else that's more positive. And I think, we've had a couple, everyone has projects that kind of go south and people start complaining, and the negativity of the site it's really, it can get away from you really quick. So
I agree. And that's definitely, especially on an excavation when you are in close quarters for the entire time. And I think as far as wearing headphones on an excavation though, and having external music, I mean, first off, when I started, I don't know, 10 plus years ago, my first 3 years in archaeology were all excavations. It was crazy. I never did a single pedestrian survey or shovel testing survey. I got just luck of the draw. I was on a whole bunch of different excavations. Yeah. And so I was like, wow, this is what CRM is like. Little did I know. But anyway, those were all in the Southeast United States as well. And I mean, when you first get on the project, sure, there's a lot of conversation because you're around new people or people you haven't seen in a while, depending on how long you've been in. And sure, there's a lot of conversations. But I mean, if you're going to be on this long term, and my first site, I almost don't even count that project, but it was only a few weeks, and then it snowed in North Dakota, Minnesota, and we were basically shut down for the winter and never went back. But the next one I went on, a week or two later, was in Miami, Florida, starting in December, and we went until June that year. And there was already a crew. I joined an existing crew that had been there for a little while, and there were people that went on after they reduced the size of the crew. But we were there for a long time, and sometimes somebody had some kind of speaker or something out there. There's never any power, so you got to have somebody with a decent enough music thing. And 10 years ago, that was more difficult than it is now, but it's still, somebody has to have something that's weatherproof and can get dusty, and they're willing to bring it out and keep it charged. And then the other thing is the type of music, of course, it's got to be something everybody likes. But I think in my experience, every single time somebody would bring something out these days, and then it's always just going down into headphones. Now, for me, I don't listen to music in the field. I listen to podcasts. So I'm going to put at least one headphone in or something and listen to podcasts all day long. There might be music playing around, and I'm fine with that. So that's excavation. But for survey, I almost prefer somebody has a headphone in, to be honest, because this last project I was on, there were, I think 3 out of 4 of us had headphones, and we were all listening to podcasts and one person did not. When you get somebody who's chatty and wants to have conversations, and it's windy out and you're 25 meters apart, it can be really difficult to hear them without turning your head towards them. And guess what you're doing when you turn your head towards them? You're not looking at the ground.
Yep.
I almost prefer that we save the conversations for break and lunch and the ride out and the ride in, and we just focus on work. And one of the best ways to do that is to just have a headphone in and just kind of tune everybody else out. Look up every once in a while, make sure you're online and where you're supposed to be, but just focus on the ground. And the best way for me personally to do that is to just have a headphone in and have podcasts playing. And it gets real hard when somebody's trying to be chatty and I don't know, you just can't pay attention. All right. Well, that was an unexpectedly long conversation about headphones related to a birthday present today. So let's take a break and come back on the other side of this. Hopefully you're able to listen to this in the field while you're, doing some kind of work or traveling out to a field site or something like that. But there's not a whole lot of work going on right now. So maybe you're listening to this over the summer. Who knows? Either way, we'll be right back.
Chris Webster here for the Archaeology Podcast Network. We strive for high-quality interviews and content so you can find information on any topic in archaeology from around the world. One way we do that is by recording interviews with our hosts and guests located in many parts of the world all at once. We do that through the use of Zencastr. That's Zencastr. Zencastr allows us to record high-quality audio with no stress on the guest. Just send them a link to click on, and that's it. Zencastr does the rest. They even do automatic transcriptions. Check out the link in the show notes for 30% off your first 3 months, or go to zencastr.com and use the code CRMArch. Looking to expand your knowledge of X-rays and imaging in the archaeology field? Then check out An Introduction to Paleoradiography, a short online course offering professional training for archaeologists and affiliated disciplines. Created by archaeologist, radiographer, and lecturer James Elliott, the content of this course is based upon his research and teaching experience in higher education. It is approved by the Chartered Institute for Archaeologists as 4 hours of training. That's in the UK, for those of you that don't know. So don't miss out on this exciting opportunity for professional and personal development. For more information on pricing and course structure, visit paleoimaging.com. That's PALEO imaging.com, and look for the link in the show notes to this episode.
All right, welcome back to the CRM Archaeology Podcast. And because this is Easter and people have things to do and it's my birthday and I don't want to do it, this is going to be the last segment of this particular episode. It's going to be a short one today. And since we just spent 10 minutes trying to get the software to work again, for I don't know what's going on, should be a light recording day for Zencastr, but that's the software we use. But anyway, I wanted to get some insight from Doug about CRM over in the UK, because we haven't really talked about that. We've talked about how coronavirus and all these concerns and lockdowns and things like that are affecting CRM in this country, but we do have a fairly high number of UK listeners, and I'm curious as to what the impact is over there. So Doug, what do you got?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag. So Scotland has shut down all construction sites that are not critical. So like critical would be like building new hospitals or roads and stuff like that. Basically, Scotland, for the most part, is shut down. People are still doing things like desk-based assessments, little bits of work here, post-excavation, report writing, things like that. The UK hasn't, like England and Wales, have not quite shut down construction, but a lot of construction has shut down. So you need to be able to work and stay 2 meters away from each other. So that means, a single person to a vehicle, because there's just no vehicles in the UK where you can get 2 people in a vehicle and be 2 meters away from each other.
Right.
And so big projects like HS2, which is this big high-speed rail project that has hundreds of archaeologists employed on it, probably the biggest archaeological project in Europe, maybe the world. That's still going on, though there's, little snags here and there. But it's a real mixed bag. So most of the major house builders have shut down. A lot of other projects have shut down. The UK in general, it's a bit complicated, but unlike, say, the United States, they've actually it's still pretty lousy, but they've actually put out a pretty decent support package. So you can furlough your staff and the government will pay 80% of their wages. So several thousand archaeologists have now been furloughed, and basically you just can't do any work, but you're on 80% of your wages, which is still better than if you were to get, go on welfare or whatnot, the dole, as they call it over here.
Sure.
So there's that, but it's still pretty bad. I think 1 million people, even with this, to keep people from. So the idea behind that was for companies not to fire all their employees and just to keep them on, so that when things restart, you still have your employees and you're not suddenly looking around. And this is across every sector, everywhere in the UK. But even with that, something like 1 million people filed for unemployment benefits in the last couple of weeks. So there's that. And basically, I don't know, the support's supposed to last till the end of May. Realistically, it's going to have to go on for a couple of months beyond that. And then when they withdraw that, there's still probably not going to be a lot of work. So at that point, then a ton of archaeologists are going to be unemployed.
Right.
So a lot of people are sort of stuck in either working right now, furloughed on 80% of their salary, waiting for them to be. Most of those people are not going to have jobs when this ends, or end is we should put that in quotes, because this is going to drag on for months and months, and there's going to be variations on that. But as soon as the government withdraws that furlough support, it's going to be worse than the last recession, easily.
Yeah. I just heard yesterday they canceled Burning Man already, and that's at the beginning of September. So, big gatherings and things like that are on for the year.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, so we're doing some estimates, and we still haven't even hit peak here yet, and they haven't really hit peak in the United States. So, best case scenario is maybe, you hit peak, plateaus, and then it goes down. So you're looking at double whatever the length of your previous lockdown time is. So
sure.
UK's been in lockdown for 3.5 some weeks. God, like the days have sort of melded together, maybe 4 weeks. We haven't hit peak. So, we may have another 2 weeks for that, maybe 12 weeks after that before they may start loosening up things. And that just might mean they withdraw all the support and tell people to get back to work, and there's no work. So, fun stuff. Not depressing at all.
Jeez. Yeah.
So, we have unemployment here. So I'm trying to figure out how is that different where you guys are? I mean, we had the Families First Response Act that they enacted in March, middle of March. So that helps increase the unemployment and the extent of an unemployment, even for people that wouldn't normally be eligible for it, for the benefits. So that has expanded at least that. And so we have a lot of companies right now are furloughing their workers or just having them go on unemployment right now. So is that not the case there?
Yeah. So you have a sort of very similar concept of unemployment in that, like, some of it's slightly based on your wages. Here, it doesn't make that much of a difference. Basically get roughly, there's like a very basic job seekers allowance, which is like 70 or 80 pounds a month. And then unemployment's maybe around 100, 120 per week.
Right.
Sorry. And job seekers is also like the basic, which is like 70 or 80 per week. So, I mean, like, yeah, you're looking at maybe 500 some, maybe up to 600 some a month, which is, depends where you live, may just barely cover your rent. Definitely not if you live in London.
Right.
And so, yeah, there's that. And there's other like support that will pay partial amounts of your rent. But again, it caps out at a certain amount that basically doesn't make London affordable.
Right.
And then again, you can also get a bit of support for your mortgage payments as well. But it's all designed so that you actually can't live on it, so that you're encouraged to go back to work.
Right.
Which is, like most places in the States.
On the, outside of this circumstance where people are really kind of stuck, that is a good concept. You want people to get back to work. But in this situation, they're really, we're at the mercy of somebody else's decision here. So, it makes it difficult.
And is London ever affordable for archaeologists in the UK?
No, not really.
Right.
They have a London waiting. So you get actually paid more to work in London, but like it's definitely not even remotely close to covering your costs. And so like some of the big companies actually in London, MOLA, Museum of London Archaeology, is actually moving a lot of its staff out of London at the moment. And that's just because, there's a lot of, before this happened, a lot of big projects that sort of ended and stuff. And it's quite expensive to be in London and try to make a living as an archaeologist. It's a bit ridiculous, but it's pretty much, somewhat similar system to the United States and the basic concept of, unemployment benefits. They've just cranked up a bunch of support for this. So like you can furlough your employees and the government will pay 80% of their wages, up to a certain amount and all that sort of stuff. But even that support is so-so. And a lot of the other things are they've been doing loans. So they've trying to encourage businesses to take out loans, which is not great because they eventually have to pay them back. And they haven't processed I think 300,000 applications, and they've processed 1% of them after 3 weeks. So there's going to be in a couple of months quite a few archaeology organizations that are basically going to go under or essentially lay off all their staff down to 1 or 2 people and then try to rebuild in the future.
Wow.
Unemployment's always been so sketchy anyway, as an archaeologist having to file for unemployment. It's always just like a kick in the pants to see how little your state government, in the places where I was filing to, they just totally didn't care at all about, livable wage or livability on unemployment. But I think a lot of people now who had never actually been on unemployment are realizing, even when they give it to you, it's not a panacea that's actually going to help. So do you see where there's any kind of like movement starting off now to provide, livable wage or guaranteed basic minimum wage, just basically to lock these things in so that the government's kind of on the hook for this? Do you see that happening? Because I don't really see a lot of that happening here in the States.
So they did increase the unemployment benefits a little bit when this came out. But again, I mean, it's a Tory government, which is like the slightly less fascist version of the Republican Party, but along the same ideological lines that like people shouldn't be getting any sort of support from the state. There's a great article I read where like anonymously one of the representatives from the Conservative Party was like shining his colleagues and saying, guys, you need to remember we're the Conservative Party. We don't do give out handouts and stuff like that. Even though basically all MPs are like, we really need to provide actual support. And there's been huge gaps. So like if you're self-employed, there is some support they're trying to put together, but it's super complicated. And if you like were self-employed in the last year, you basically get nothing. Mm-hmm. They're basically looking at like your last 3 years of taxes and then giving you a percentage of that, but only off of profit. So it's, some people are like self-employed but have a company. Some people are actually self-employed and don't have a company, and it's an absolute mess. And so basically, yeah, maybe a third of self-employed people, maybe a quarter, they don't actually know, are basically have lost all work and are not going to get any support at all. Wow. Or so little that it makes nothing, a few hundred here. And it's also much harder to get like unemployment if you're self-employed as well. You have to have like filed in a certain way. So it's uber complicated. And I imagine it's basically the same, other than a few details, it's basically the same of what you run into in the States, which is very complicated. Try to keep people off benefits. And it's not designed for a pandemic, or actually it's not designed for recessions. And it's mainly just made to be abusive and mean to people. So like it used to be that if you got unemployment, you had to go into a job center quite often and check in. Like if you were running late, if you missed your appointment, they'd basically take away your benefits for weeks on end. Wow. And so most people don't have a vehicle in the UK, especially if you're on unemployment or on benefits. So, bus runs late and that's you screwed for like 6 weeks with no benefits. And they've had to get rid of that because of the coronavirus. But, it's the same. It depends on what state you are in the States. But, they'll have all these crazy requirements about, you need to do this. There's like, thank God no one's in Florida at the moment. And if you're a listener in Florida, I'm really sorry for you. Where like people are going in person to try to sign up for unemployment, risking long lines because it's so horrendous to try to apply. So, I mean, I hear the same stories from the States and the UK, and there's not a lot of difference. Overwhelmed systems with too many people applying in a very short period of time and not enough resources to handle it.
Yeah, I think there should be two approaches. I definitely think there should be a different approach to a situation like this. This is not, people are stuck. They have no other option. They cannot work. It's a very different approach than someone who loses their job and is encouraging them to go out and work again and not get into that cyclical, catch-22 of not being employable again. So, I mean, I understand both sides of it, but this is a completely different situation. There's just no opportunity for anybody to do anything. I do definitely think this is, obviously, I mean, for people that have had to deal with unemployment or any kind of government system, realizing how inefficient and poorly run it is, there's no reason in this day and age that we should not be able to handle at least to some degree, processing people that are losing their jobs and getting them benefits right away. There should be no reason for that. And I just think that and a few of the other situations that have happened on the state level of not being able to handle the pandemic is definitely, making it obvious that there needs to be some changes. I hope it happens.
Yeah. The thing I was thinking about during all this too was you can apply for unemployment. And I know at least here in the States and probably also in the UK, given the latitudes, people are coming off of winter and probably weren't attached to a company where you would get certain benefits from that company being able to cover payroll with certain loans and things that they can get and grants so to cover payroll. So you're not on somebody's payroll. Right. So you have to actually file for unemployment versus another way of getting paid. So it just makes it more difficult for archaeologists in particular, because a lot of archaeologists are coming off a winter where they weren't on somebody's payroll. So that just sucks all around.
Well, the gig economy all around has had a lot of hard time.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
That was a loophole that sort of has kicked in, not a loophole. Unfortunate thing in the UK is you had to have been on a payroll on February 28th to be able to get furloughed.
All right.
So if you were switching jobs, and then they haven't quite made it very clear. So there's some people who projects naturally ended in mid-March. And the employer has been told that they can rehire people, but then they've also been told they can't rehire those people and furlough them because their job was naturally going to end. So there's actually no clarity on that. So there's some people who just got super unlucky. I mean, at the end of February, people had kind of heard about this. Everyone sort of knew something was happening, but no one was really planning to. If you guys remember back 4 weeks ago, which seems like 4 years ago, we hadn't even really thought about talking about coronavirus as impacting. 2 weeks ago, we talked about this on the podcast because it definitely was. But 4 weeks ago, I mean, if you could even think that far back, it wasn't on anyone's radar. So many people were making life plans to go to a different project or start with a new company, or those really unfortunate people who decided they were going to be self-employed or go out on their own in March of this year. And then now there's quite a few terms to describe what they are, but I don't think anything that we can say on the podcast.
Well, all right. So that somber note, let's leave this on a higher note, because everything is changing. Like you said, Doug, in 2 weeks, we might be talking about the future of archaeology entirely, because you can really foresee something happening this year where all these construction projects, everything is winding down. Archaeologists might be finding other jobs when this all kicks back off again because of the uncertainty in the whole process, the natural uncertainty we have in a good economy, and then the uncertainty placed on us by this circumstance. What is this going to look like in 2021? Are we going to have, just a complete lack of people in the field, and then not being able to find enough people to fill these jobs? And then what does that do for construction projects? And ultimately, I don't know if the United States would even be able to handle that. If they say all these things are stopping because archaeologists aren't going back to work or found other jobs and we don't have enough people graduating, well, then they just gut all the policies that give us jobs. I could 100% see that happening. That'd be just one more nail in the coffin.
Or on the other hand, I can see the other thing happening.
Yeah.
Because if you think back, last time we had this happen, they put a bunch of people to work doing archaeology. And from that, we even got CRM. So we had the laws and everything like that decades after the first contracted jobs where the government paid universities to have people who are excavators, not even necessarily archaeologists, go out and do a bunch of archaeology on what were called back then historic sites. So we could have the opposite. Could be a renaissance. It could be a make work type thing where a bunch of people who otherwise wouldn't even thought about archaeology, because they need to find some kind of a way, because we're decades behind on evaluating half of our, public lands and stuff like that. And there's, more work than the Park Service or Forest Service or anyone could really ever do. And they've always been hamstrung by budget. They could actually just take a dump truck of cash and pour it into archaeology and we could be back bigger than ever before.
And there are some projects that we're starting to that are coming up on our radar for my company. And, we have some clients that are looking at different options and stimulus money and certain grants that are being talked about that is going to supposedly increase some of this work. So,
okay.
We'll see. Time will tell. That would be very nice.
You're never going to run out of archaeologists. Unemployment's going to be at 20% at the end of the month.
Right.
Yeah, that's not going to be on anyone's radar that there's going to be too much work.
Yeah.
That's going to be even the tens of thousands of ex-archaeologists when they have nothing else to do because, 20% unemployment.
Yeah.
They will jump in to do archaeology.
Sure.
All right, guys. Well, on that note, let's call this episode. But I will leave you with some funny things I saw today. This being Easter, because every Easter, I at least see through my feed because I'm not that religious of a person. Although I've seen religious people posting these things, but you always see like zombie Jesus, right? That it comes around every Easter, zombie Jesus jokes. But I'm seeing. Oh my God. So I'm seeing so many things these days saying how Jesus was taken into custody for violating stay-at-home orders for coming out of his tomb.
I did see.
Or
I did see that. Orders. I saw him coming out of the tomb and police comes by and say, don't even think about it.
I also saw
exactly.
Some folks who are native that I know were joking on Facebook about how now the whole world is a reservation and that they understand what it's like. So they understand, it's sad that everyone's going through this, but Native people, and this was from Native people who posted this on social media. So
I think that's an excellent point, and I think all of us need to use this as an example on a kind of serious note, to have compassion for each other and to understand that, when you look at people that are on unemployment, there are going to be a lot of people going to be on unemployment for the very first time in their life. And hopefully it'll give them compassion moving forward.
Yeah. Remove some of the stigma from the people that have to do it more frequently. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, guys, thanks for joining me on this holiday and this, and I don't mean my birthday, but this holiday and this shorter show. And hopefully we can still keep finding stuff to talk about, because without certain projects and things going on, that's going to start getting lean. So, hey, I'll take that opportunity to tell people, anybody listening to this show, post on Facebook, Twitter, find our contact info on the show notes, and submit your suggestion topics. What are some things you'd like to hear us talk about? What are some things you'd like to hear our opinions on? What are some things you'd like to hear Doug and Steven disagree with me about? So we'll just leave it right there. And I know, right? Like what topics aren't you going to disagree with me about? Anyway, so thanks everybody for coming on. And again, happy holiday. I know this was a week and a half ago for people listening to this in real time, but still, hopefully your April's not going too bad. And as I have said at the end of the last few shows, hopefully the world hasn't ended by the time you hear this. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time. That's it for another episode of the CRM Archaeology Podcast. Links to some of the items mentioned on the show are in the show notes for this podcast, which can be found at www.archpodnet.com/CRMArchPodcast. Please comment and share anywhere you see the show. If you'd like us to answer a question on a future episode, email us. Use the contact form on the website, or just email chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com. Support the show and the network at archpodnet.com/members. Get some swag and extra content while you're there. Send us show suggestions and interview suggestions. We want this to be a resource for field technicians everywhere, and we want to know what you want to know about. Thanks to everyone for joining me this week. Thanks also to the listeners for tuning in, and we'll see you in the field. Goodbye. Thanks to everyone for joining me this week. Thanks also to the listeners for tuning in. We'll see you in the field. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
I'm not even going to say anything since I just did. Oh, his line just grayed out for me. I don't know if he did that on purpose.
Oh, yeah. No. Oh, my God.
He just shut his internet off. That's the new response.
Oh, my gosh.
He just hangs up.
It's because of those jokes we were making earlier, man. The internet is getting us back for that kind of inappropriate stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Is he going to be able to come back or not?
I don't know. His line just ungrayed for me. I'm just about to stop it. Doug's about to lose his chance to say anything. I'm going to have to put in a sound effect.
Goodbye.
This show is produced and recorded by the Archaeology Podcast Network, Chris Webster and Tristan Boyle, in Reno, Nevada, at the Reno Collective.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.
Thanks again for listening to this episode and for supporting the Archaeology Podcast Network. If you want these shows to keep going, consider becoming a member for just $7.99 US a month. That's cheaper than a venti quad eggnog latte. Go to archpodnet.com/members for more info.